Hi everybody, welcome to your lesson that's all about how humans can impact the ecosystems and things that we do in our everyday lives even that can have lasting effects. So there are major impacts that can impact the ecosystem. We'll talk about what we do here in a second, but as you know, there's also natural disasters that can destroy an entire habitat, ecosystem, hurricanes, tsunamis, wildfires. We've talked about this in 7th grade. But then there's also invasive species that can move into an environment and take over. Okay, so things like up here, we've got zebra mussels. These are invasive, meaning that they move into an ecosystem and utilize all of the resources in that ecosystem, making it so hard for the existing organisms to be able to continue to survive and thrive because the zebra mussels are taking up all of those resources, okay? So that's one way a natural invasive species can impact an ecosystem. Now let's talk about us as humans. You've heard this stuff for a very long time, so we're not going to spend too much time on it today, but you know that pollution has a lasting effect on ecosystems. Land conversion, when we wipe out forests to convert that land into housing developments, deforestation, even overhunting. Now we know that hunting can be a reasonable solution for invasive species. Like here in Texas, we have wild pig, and those are invasive and they're destructive and they rip up habitats and ecosystems wherever they go. They reproduce like crazy. So hunting these wild pigs would be one solution for keeping their numbers in check and not letting them become overpopulated. However, on the flip side of that, overhunting would also have detrimental side effects to the ecosystem, especially if you're overhunting an animal that does not wreak havoc on its environment, that's literally just kind of hanging out doing its thing, but but if we overhunt that, then we are taking away something from the environment that keeps it all in balance, okay? So humans need to be very careful about overhunting as well. So what are some things that we can do to prevent ecosystem disruption? Well, we can replant. We can replant what we tear down. We can recycle. We can create sanctuaries or protected chunks of land, even protected chunks of ocean that cannot be disturbed, okay? So on land, we can call this sanctuaries or governed areas. In the ocean, we could call them marine protected areas, okay? So that way nothing can go in that area and cause disruption for the organisms that live within it. We can also go green, and that would mean cutting down on the gas we use and switching to more electric options. I know that that can have some pros and cons in itself, so I encourage you to do the research and find out what would work for you and what would work for your family while still helping the world that we live in survive and thrive for generations to come. So we also have to be very careful about underpopulations. I just kind of mentioned that just a little bit ago about how if we can overhunt, then we would have a loss of population. Overhunting when there's really no reason to hunt these animals, say they're not destructive, we might be calling this poaching. So things like we would do to the rhinos, the black rhinos, elephants. These are animals that are often poached because there's something on their body that people might like for a trophy. These are not animals that are destructive to their environment in a way that would be catastrophic, and yet they are still being overhunted, okay? So we also have a tendency to take out habitat. So loss of habitat would have a detrimental side effect as well. What can naturally happen that lowered the populations in ecosystems? Well, even climate change. Okay, if there is, say, a severe drought one year and the climate kind of has a a weird thing going on, that drought, that lack of water could have detrimental side effects to the populations in that ecosystem. If there's for some reason a disease that comes through, that could have a detrimental side effect. A lack of food. Again, we're talking about drought. But let's say that there's a drought and there's not a lot of vegetation for these animals to live off of, so then they die off. And then, of course, the predators that come in don't have their prey items because their prey items are already dead because they don't have the vegetation. It has a trickle-down effect, okay? So all of these things can lower the populations within an ecosystem.